I'm Shwa, and you are listening to Light Up with Shwa, a weekly podcast to open our hearts and minds on a journey with me. Hello, Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. Glad to be on the podcast.
Thank you so much for taking our time. And if you need to sip or drink anything, you go ahead. Please do that. Okay, so
Excellent.
Feel comfortable. All right. So tell me about yourself and what do you do briefly, please?
Sure. So my name is Kevin Singer, and I wear a couple of different hats. First hat I wear is I am a husband to Brittany of 7 years and father to 4 children under 5. So my life is a bit chaos. So I have a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 2-month-old.
Wow.
And so that's a big part of my life.
Yeah.
I am an adjunct faculty member at 2 community colleges in Chicagoland. I teach world religion courses. I teach ethics and introduction to philosophy courses. And, you know, that's a real joy in my life, being able to speak into the lives of college students and to see how they're formulating new ideas and asking big questions. Mm-hmm. I am a PhD student at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there I'm studying religious and diversity, part of a study called Ideals. And
yeah,
that
I wanted to know a little
for,
bit about that. Yeah. What
right.
is that?
Ideals stands for Interfaith Diversity and Experiences and Attitudes Longitudinal Survey. It's a mouthful. But essentially, our team surveyed thousands and thousands of college students across America about how they're navigating worldview diversity on their campuses. And we've got such great results, such great data, and it's been such a fun project to be a part of. And lastly, I am co-founder of an initiative called Neighborly Faith. And I started it in 2014 when I was a graduate student at Wheaton College in Illinois. And our initiative really aims to draw more evangelical Christians into interfaith work. And we as definitely a bit of a challenge, but also an exciting challenge for us, for my friend Chris and I. And so we've had some fun with that. We just released a podcast series ourselves a few weeks ago, and it's the first time we've ever done this. We wanted to create something that would be accessible, sort of the everyday evangelical. And we've gotten some great feedback so far, and so I've really become a fan of podcasts like the one you're doing.
Okay,
and
good, wonderful.
So it sounds like a lot, but I do get it all done and try to be done at 5 p.m. every day. So
you even know that I'm going to ask that, and you already answered, huh? Like how old are you, and like how do you get all this done? It's like, okay, wonderful.
Yeah,
so I guess
somehow it happens.
I guess I chose the right person to interview to inspire me further and learn from you, I guess. Okay, so going back, what you said. What's the name of your podcast so we can tell our listeners maybe? And
sure,
I would love to hear. I didn't know that.
It's just called Neighborly Faith.
Neighborly Faith. Okay.
Yep. And really that title comes from, the call of Jesus, the great commandment to love God and love neighbor. And given that it seems so often now your neighbors really can be people of other faiths,
exactly.
Our question is really like, how do we nuance our faith for 2017 to really accommodate the reality that a lot of people around us are not Christians? And so that's an important question that we're thinking about.
How long have you been doing the podcast?
The podcast is just something that we've been working on over the last 6 months or so.
Okay. So are you getting a good response to that? Like in terms of, I don't know, when we'll talk about that also. But
Sure.
what kind of response do you have so far, briefly?
Sure. And that's a great question because a lot of it has been kind of an experiment. And I mean, in terms of, what it means to be an evangelical Christian in 2017, that question alone is gathering all sorts of different responses and debate. Our goal was to try and reach that whole slew of evangelicals who may not be drawn to this type of resource naturally, or they may not be predisposed to want to think about religious diversity. And that was a group that, having that group in mind really formed our podcast from the very beginning, because we said, we could talk about this or we could talk about that, but the question is, would that everyday mainstream evangelical know what we're talking about? Would they have the language, the concepts to understand what we're talking about?
Good.
And so all that's to say, we've gotten exciting responses back from people who, again, they're not, they don't have 1,000 Twitter followers. They don't, they haven't written a book in the last year, but they're just sort of average, everyday people who are like, this inspired me to think differently about this. And those are the responses that we're most excited about, because that's who we're really going for, is sort of that everyday person.
So what is the aim then to bring the evangelical minds to open up, or like what's the agenda goal here?
Sure. So in this space, we've noticed that there's a lot of people who want evangelicals to change, to be different. In fact, some people don't even want it.
In what ways?
Sure. So a lot of people would like to see evangelicals broaden their understanding of who's saved, or or I guess to put it this way, broaden their scope of who might be in heaven when all is said and done. I think some people would like to see evangelicals ascribe more integrity and credibility to other faiths. Then there are some who would like to see evangelicals take a different political posture, perhaps to be more open on immigration and refugees. And I should say that we are very, we're hopeful that evangelicals will come to see that, they've been praying for people overseas for decades. And now that those people are coming, this is an opportunity rather than something that evangelicals should be fearful about. It's funny how for so long evangelicals have said, we're praying for the world, but now that the world is coming, it's
now
like they're not making the connection.
It's the time.
They're not, exactly.
The testing
they're fearful.
time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think our hope is to help evangelicals see conundrums and contradict that, and to say, Jesus was not, he was not afraid to hang out with people who had a different worldview, a different way of constructing the world. He wanted them to know him and to see him as God, but he was also gracious and compassionate and sympathetic. And in that way, we don't necessarily expect evangelicals to change their beliefs, the beliefs they've held for hundreds of years. But what we would like to see is a different posture, a posture, again, that's what we call neighborly, a posture that's hospitable, generous, willing to have a conversation and be willing to listen instead of just talking.
Well, I'm doing that with one of the evangelicals.
I'm not
this
even
is a
sure
good example.
I'm doing that very well right now.
This is a good example. I guess we are establishing that you are giving talking. We are having a conversation openly. First of all, to a female who is a Muslim and an evangelical is talking to. So me. So that's here we go. We start from here.
Right.
So
this is the good stuff. Sharing our thoughts, sharing our lives, and for too long, evangelicals have been so caught up in can I do things like this? Can I do this and maintain purity and maintain otherness and maintain exclusivity? But unfortunately, that posture to the rest of the world has come across as really a posture of arrogance, a posture of haughtiness, a posture of piousness.
So do you think there isn't that, or there is some of it?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay.
I'm one of those, I'm in a strange space where like, I agree with a lot of the critiques that have been levied against my tradition. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, unlike some voices that, to be candid, kind of irritate me, I'm also not ready to give up on my tradition either.
That's good.
And say, there's no hope for us and we should just deconstruct and shut all our doors and empty the pews, as they say. I think it's harder to turn around and to say, how can I help sanctify my tradition?
Excellent.
And so I'm willing to do that hard work, even if it doesn't have a lot of sex appeal, as they say.
No, that's good. You're trying to do good here. So staying on interfaith, so that means you just said that not necessarily there was I had a question in my mind for you that, especially being in evangelical, do you feel that, I assume you don't, but then most of the evangelicals feel that if they do interfaith work or meet more other faiths and intermingle or learn or become friends or whatever, or visit their worship houses, would that dilute their faith or affect them in any negative way? Can you talk about that briefly, please?
It's interesting. Some evangelicals think that evangelicalism arose out of heaven, and we forget that evangelicalism is a social and cultural construct, and we're just as prone to diverge from scriptural teaching as any other tradition in Christianity. And one of my favorite texts in the New Testament is Acts chapter 17, where Paul enters the Athenian theater, so to speak, and Paul interacts quite equitably with the men of Athens, who he says, I've walked around your city, I've seen your statues to the unknown God, and I want to speak sort of my truth into your situation. And I hope that what I'm saying is of benefit to you, because I have a particular view of God that I think you need to hear about. And what's really fascinating is Paul actually quotes their philosophers. He shows a basic level of literacy about their beliefs. And I think right there we have an example of, someone who evangelicals love, the Apostle Paul, showing that he had the basic level of respect to do the research and to do the study necessary to talk intelligibly to people of another worldview. And I don't know if evangelicals are used to looking at some of those, what might be seen as strange journeys of Paul, interacting with people who believed in Greco-Roman gods and him sort of engaging in that same thought process. Like, how do I speak to these people? And how do I do so in a way that shows grace and truth? And
respect for the others, and it's mutual. Yeah.
And evangelicals have those examples in our text. But we just may not be emphasizing them very much.
That's good.
Just like any other tradition, overemphasizes or underemphasizes.
So you are
things.
trying to do that. That's what your message through whatever you work or practice.
I'm just trying to tell evangelicals that people of other faiths are made in the image of God, and we can choose to draw a narrative that focuses exclusively on evil or sin or demonology, as we've done for 100 years, or we could recognize that, again, people of other faiths are made in the image of God, and on that basis, they have the capacity to know God as we would want them to know God. And in that sense, they have an inherent dignity, and they're human beings. And it's funny, evangelicals for a long time have sort of set their sights on atheism, agnosticism and secularism, and like they're the enemy of culture, and we need to sort of set our sights on building a sort of an enterprise of apologetics to make sure atheists know that we're in the right. But all through that time, people of other faiths who do agree with us on a massive amount of things, like there is a God, or this God has an opinion about the way we should live, and the way we should live is to be gracious, to be honorable, to be respectful. And then one of my favorite texts in the Old Testament is, the man of God or the woman of God, they make even their enemies at peace with them. And I've seen that same desire among people of other faiths.
Yes.
They want to live in a world that's peaceful. They want to live in a world where they can get medical care and they can send their kids to good schools and they can live a virtuous life.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people that's like, see, all religions are the same. But
Right. No. Yeah.
we're so focused on secularism that we don't see these massive faith communities who are like, yeah, we want to work together with you to address religious freedom. We want to work together with you to address the dignity of human life. We want to work together with you to address all of these different things that, politically speaking, evangelicals care a lot about.
So you would, and so that shows you being encouraging people, doesn't matter which faiths they are, especially Christians or evangelicals, to participate in activities or interact with people of other faiths and other, ethnicities, and don't lose the opportunity to learn and to actually teach your faith to others in terms of, in a way, the purpose shouldn't be conversion, and that's where we are mixing things nowadays, that the point is not to convert each other all the time. The point is to learn to understand each other and live, and then the rest is on the will of God.
That's perfectly said.
Right. Thank you. So that's a good message, and that's what my message is. And if you're comfortable in your skin and I'm comfortable in my skin, then we can have a better civilized conversation.
Absolutely.
But first, we have to know our faith.
Absolutely.
Right.
I interact best with people who themselves are in touch with their faith. I find those conversations like the one we're having to be the most exciting.
Yeah.
For someone to say, like, yeah, I love my faith too. I love my God too.
Yep.
Then there's that level of empathy. Like, I know where you're coming from. You know, you think a lot about religious things, and those things inform the way you think, the way you parent.
Exactly.
And
so I'm going to come to that
sure.
too.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Yeah. No, this is very exciting, because I think I need to have another session with you, because this is not going to be enough. This is not going to come.
And get coffee sometime.
Yeah, definitely. And this is not going to be finished. No, because the message is, this is the friendly message. That's what we are doing. I want people to learn and understand that being who I am and being who you are, and they can see the bios later, and I don't want to get into that now, that people can have conversation, and we should encourage conversations such like these.
Exactly.
In order for our world, there are differences, and I will differ with you, and you will differ with me in many things, especially religious. Even from, I'm not going to go into it, but the definition of God. Okay? So that's where I wanted to ask you, how much do you know about other faiths? Let's begin with that a little focused. Yeah. How many faiths? So you are familiar, let me be straight. With Islam? Are you familiar with the basic tenets of Islam? Judaism?
Yeah, so having taught sort of world religion over the last 5 years, I've been able to gain I would not say that I am an expert by any stretch of the word. And part of that's simply because, I haven't been to every Muslim community in America and the way that they are expressing their faith in their context. And so, part of the critique, I think, of religious studies, especially in the West, is we teach religious studies in a way that makes other traditions besides Christianity seem very static. And and I know that some Hindu thinkers are especially sensitive about this, that Christianity is this beautifully diverse mosaic, but then Islam and Hinduism have these very monolithic definitions. And so, part of me will always, I think, be expert in another tradition, even Christianity, because there's a sense in which, I haven't been to your mosque, and I haven't met your imam, and there's a sense in which until I do, it's difficult to say, I know your experience better than you do, which I think has been a critique of the Western study and teaching of religion. I can say that my most, the tradition that has intrigued me most in terms of study is Vedanta Hinduism, Or you could say like theological Vaishnava Hinduism, the traditions that ascribe to Vishnu or Krishna as their transmundane, so to speak. And actually what interested me most about Vedanta Hinduism was its being so different from sort of monotheism. There's this Brahman, this all-pervasive energy, and in my tradition, it's like God other, and but the Brahman is sort of within each person and within the world. And one of my favorite metaphors is, in Western faith, God is the painter, whereas in Eastern faith, God is the painting. And that was so disruptive for me as like a traditional Baptist Christian thinker that I had to study it more. I had to know, like, how did that affect the way people lived? How did that affect the way people thought about God, approached God? And again, you can even see my tendency is to go right back to that capital God, right? Because that's the reality is we're all looking at these things from
but that's good that you're trying to challenge and test yourself in a way to see how everything else is existing.
Right.
All right. Let me ask this question. So what is the best thing in you, that you admire in your faith?
Wow, that's a question. I'm going to steal that question if you don't mind.
Okay.
And here's why I like the question. I like the question because this is the only way, in my opinion, that you can engage in really meaningful interfaith dialogue is when you've answered this question for yourself. One of my favorite quotes is, I love people of other faiths, not because they love what I believe, but because I do. And there's a sense in which, let me just answer the question. I feel like a politician. Like, let me answer everything else. That's the actual question.
I guess we have more influence of that nowadays, right? Even if we are not a politician, we are going to end up being one.
Yeah. Okay. So what do I love most about my tradition? Okay. So I love the emphasis on Bible. I think the Bible gets us outside of ourselves, and it can, again, I use this word a lot, but I think it can disrupt our constant desire to want to use science as the basis of truth. I love that evangelicals want to go back to the scripture. They want to go back to the text. They ask, how does the text inform this situation? And I think that's good. I think that keeps us grounded in something that's not us. And that's so key. There's other things too. The church I attend, they just announced last week that, our church essentially raised like $21,000 for people living in Brazil who need our help. And what I love about that is that's not going to make the news. And I think even in some ways the congregation was trying to wrap our heads around that. Like, I've never been to Brazil, like what have we really accomplished? But I love sort of that drop of a hat. Like, no, we really ought to think about, people in disenfranchised situations, whether it's disaster relief or orphans. I know evangelicals have put a strong adoption and fostering, and that's been really intriguing to me.
So is there an underlying goal that they can have more if they adopt the orphans, and also that will be more that they will be influenced by the evangelical faith or religion?
It's a great question.
Is that the purpose?
I wouldn't deny that for some people that is part of their thinking is we want to introduce them to Christ. It's not as much like a good, then we save them from the fires of hell or something like that. I don't really hear that as much as, most of the evangelicals I talk to who are engaging in adoption really just want to improve, a lot of the physical elements of that child's life. My brother and sister-in-law are currently in the process of adopting, and their message from the very beginning is one less homeless. And
it's not necessarily converting to the faith, but in the process, I guess you do good. I mean, of course. So I'll keep this short, and let's go to the. So anything awkward about your faith that you would like to share?
We are talking about evangelicals anyway.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, we are the social cultural punching bag right now, and a lot of that is warranted. And, I'm not going to be that person who's like, look at the sunny side of our tradition at all times, because this question is so important. Because if I don't answer this question, then I sound like a salesman. And okay, so here's the dark underbelly from what I see of evangelicalism. One, we tend to operate from paradigms that privilege whiteness, and that is clear. And I don't even think mainstream evangelical leaders would deny that. I think they'd say that the way we think, the way we teach, the way we structure our programs, the way the sorts of people that we speak to are people who are traditionally white. And statistics are all over the place on this. How white is American evangelicalism? Some people say it's only 50%. Some people say, 80%. But the truth is clear. Your typical church that identifies as evangelical is likely predominantly white. Okay. And I have seen some really great examples, though, of evangelical leaders who have finally noticed that you can't just talk about multiculturalism from the stage. You need to hire people of color into leadership positions. You need to ask them to share their theological insights in a place where they can have influence. It isn't just about sort of pat yourself on the back, I my bases by saying I'm not a racist from the front of the church. There's a sense in which if you really want, to live to have a kingdom vision church, you can't just invite people of color into your pews. You have to invite them into leadership. And I've just started to see that trend pick up, but we're still a really far way away.
And that is applicable, I guess, not only in church. I would say, add to it that it is applicable everywhere, whether it's politics, schools, whichever domain you pick up. So,
absolutely, yes.
Okay. I appreciate your honesty in there. Thank you.
Sure.
So give me some advice for the listeners, what you can say, how can we live together with our differences?
Okay, so I'm going to have to explain this metaphor, but it's one I love to use. I think everybody has to stop trying to be a sportscaster for other faiths, and this is what I mean. If it's late at night and I can't sleep, ESPN SportsCenter is on. And one of the things that always cracks me up is when people who are not associated with a certain team or associated with a certain sport try to say, this is what's going to happen. Just watch the drama that's unfolding behind, the locker room doors. And I've seen people do this with evangelicals. I've seen evangelicals do this with other traditions. Let me tell you the narrative that's going to come out. And what drives me insane about this is it's our way of, because we're all human and we all struggle with not having control. It's our way to try and control the continuum. It's our way of trying to control the interfaith landscape. And what I would tell people is, if you really want to engage in meaningful exchanges across difference, you've got to stop trying to put other faith traditions in a box so that you can feel less, so that you basically try to lessen your risk by engaging with them. And again, I would say that for my own tradition, stop trying to manage the image of the West. Stop trying to put your stamp of understanding and approval or your prediction on how these things are going to unfold. And the same goes for other traditions as well. I found that the best exchanges I have are when I leave all of those presumptions at the door and I say, I want you to tell me your story. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to ascribe a level of credibility to that story even before you tell it. I'm not going to spend the entire time asking, is this person feeding my presuppositions? Are they undermining my presuppositions? I just want to be a good listener and authentically listen. And again, not try to stand there and be like, this isn't true. I know what they really mean. I'll tell you what they're really saying. And so
it's a very good and very important point I think you have hit today. This is important. We have to go to the second part. So
let's do it.
Stay here. Thank you. Thank you for staying with me through this exciting episode. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode of Light Up with Shwa.